Welcome to everything you wanted to know about helping voters but were afraid to ask. This module will address paper registration. There are two ways to start a paper registration. The voter can enter information in the MyVote system, but then print out a paper copy of the form rather than submitting the information electronically. This is referred to as mail delivery in MyVote. The second way is to just start with a paper form. In either case, when using a paper form, the voter is required to sign the form, submit proof of residence, and then deliver or mail the form with proof of residence to their municipal clerk. In November 2019, the Wisconsin Elections Commission issued a redesigned registration form. The new form requires the voter to provide essentially the same information as the old form. The redesigned form, however, is more readable and user-friendly. Directions for how to complete the form are on the back. Before we look at the paper registration form itself, let's address the role of a registration helper when working with a paper registration. When you are helping a voter with a paper registration at a food pantry or during a registration drive, you are not technically completing the registration. You are assisting the voter with the complexities of the registration process, but the registration is not actually completed until the registration form and the proof of residence have been processed by the voter's municipal clerk. Your role as a registration helper is different from the role of a poll worker on election day or someone working at an in-person absentee voting location, that is, during early voting. If you are employed by the clerk on election day or during early voting, you have the authority to actually complete the paper registration by verifying and documenting the voter's proof of residence, as would happen in the clerk's office. Volunteer registration helpers do not have that authority. Later in the presentation, we'll look at where on the registration form poll workers document and complete the registration process. Finally, unlike helping voters do a paper registration, which has to be processed by the municipal clerk to be completed, when you help a voter do an online registration, the online registration is completed on the spot once the voter sees the confirmation page. Let's take a look at the registration form section by section. In Section 1, Qualifications, the voter confirms their eligibility to vote in the state of Wisconsin. They are a citizen of the United States. They will be at least 18 years old on or before Election Day. They have resided at their current address for at least 10 days prior to the election, and if convicted of a felony, the voter must have completed the terms of their sentence, including probation, parole, or community supervision. In this section, the voter must check every box indicating that each statement applies to them in order to qualify to vote. If the voter does not check every box, they should not complete the remainder of the form. They are not eligible to vote in Wisconsin. Please note that a 17-year-old can register as long as they will be 18 years of age by the next election. 17-year-olds can only register on paper. They can either start with a paper form or enter information in the MyVote system and then print out a paper form to submit through mail delivery. A 17-year-old cannot submit the registration information electronically. Please also note that there are no exceptions to the requirement that the voter must be 18 years of age for all elections, general and primary. In Section 2, the voter writes their last name, first name, and full middle name. In Section 3, the voter first writes their date of birth. Be sure to check that the voter does not mistakenly write today's date or the current year for their date of birth. The second part of Section 3 includes the voter's phone number and email address. This information is optional, but it is very helpful if the clerk has one of these methods for contacting the voter, in case there's a question about the registration. Explain to the voter that the phone number and email are optional, but encourage them to provide the information. Most voters are happy to do so. As a volunteer, you may make mistakes when helping voters complete their forms. But don't let that stop you from working with them. Almost all mistakes can be corrected so that the voter will be registered. This does reinforce the need to include the voter's contact information, however. Section 4 is where the voter enters their current address, that is, their legal voting residence. This address must be a physical residence. It cannot be a post office box. The voter must provide the full street name, including the type, for example, street, avenue, or drive, and any directional information such as North Park Street. Confirm with the voter that there is no apartment or dorm room number if none has been listed. Moving within the same building to a new apartment or dorm room requires the voter to re-register. On occasion, the municipality for the voter's legal voting residence will be different than the municipality in the voter's mailing or postal address. In the example on the screen, the municipality for the legal voting residence written next to city, town, village is Maple Bluff. Maple Bluff is the municipality where the voter will find their polling place and where their municipal clerk works. In this example, Maple Bluff is the voting municipality. On the other hand, in this example, Madison is the mailing or postal municipality. The municipality written on mail delivered to this voter will say Madison. For most voters, the municipality in their postal address is the same as their voting municipality, in which case mailing municipality is left blank on the form. If the voter is not sure of their voting municipality, you can look it up in MyVote. Here's the page in MyVote. Click on the tab Find My Polling Place and enter the voter's address with your best guess of the municipality. The MyVote system will in most cases find the correct municipality. It is important to determine the correct voting municipality, as this is where the voter will find the correct polling place and where the registration paperwork needs to be submitted. A homeless voter can register to vote. Rather than completing Section 4 with a traditional street address, however, a homeless voter completes a map on the back of the form, indicating where they typically return each night. The voter can write the names of intersecting streets or indicate landmarks on the map. Proof of residence is still required. Section 5, Mailing Address, is for a voter who receives their mail at a location different from their residence address. A mailing address can be a post office box. The mailing address is optional and is usually left blank because most voters do not have a separate mailing address. Section 6 is where the voter writes their previous name or previous address if they register to vote with a different name or address anywhere else in the United States. For a name change, the voter enters their previous full name on the designated line. Remember, for voting purposes, a name change is not in effect until the voter has updated their name with an agency that can issue an acceptable photo ID, typically the DMV. If the voter is updating their name with the DMV, they must first update their name with the Social Security Administration. For an address change, the voter enters their previous address where they lived the last time they registered to vote. It's best if the voter can complete this section with the full previous address, including street name and house number. If the voter is unable to recall this information, however, you can submit the form with just the previous city and state. Section 7 is where the voter writes an identification number. If the voter has a valid, unexpired Wisconsin driver license or Wisconsin DOT issued ID card, they must write the driver license or ID number along with the expiration date on the form. If the voter has an expired, canceled, suspended, or revoked driver license or Wisconsin DOT issued ID, the voter must provide the last 4 digits of their Social Security number. They may also provide the Wisconsin driver license or ID number, but this is optional. If the voter has never been issued a Wisconsin driver license or Wisconsin DOT issued ID card, they register using the last 4 digits of their Social Security number. A voter who has been issued a Wisconsin driver license or Wisconsin DOT issued ID, but does not have the driver license or ID card with them, and does not know the number on the card, will not be able to register at that time. In Section 8, voters document that they are providing proof of residence with their registration form by checking the box in this section. While voters have always been required to submit proof of residence with a paper registration, A checkbox on the form that allows the voter to affirm that they are providing a valid proof of residence is new. Section 9 describes all 4 of the eligibility criteria to vote in Wisconsin. Ask the voter to read the paragraph or explain the criteria to them before the voter signs and dates the form. When the voter signs the form, they are certifying the truth and correctness of the information they have provided and their eligibility to vote. Volunteers are not responsible for verifying that the voter is in fact eligible to vote. Section 10 is for a voter who is unable to sign the form because of a disability. In that situation, the voter can designate an assistant, a friend, a family member, or the volunteer to sign the form on their behalf. The assistant signs the form and writes their address in Section 10. Section 10 is completed only when an assistant signs the form for the voter because the voter is unable to do so. A volunteer helper does not sign in this section if they are helping the voter with the registration form in a general way. In the bottom section of the form, there are spaces for verifying and documenting details of the voter's proof of residence. Previously, we described the responsibilities of a poll worker registering a voter on Election Day. The poll worker fills in information about the proof of residence in this bottom section and also signs and dates the form as the election official. Remember, as a volunteer registration helper, you do not have the authority to verify and document the voter's proof of residence, so you will leave these spaces blank. Finally, some general tips for completing a paper registration form. The registration form is a legal document that must be legible so the clerk's office staff can accurately enter the information in the state database. Either the voter or volunteer can write the information on the form. And always check the form for accuracy and completeness, and if at all possible, ask a colleague to double-check the form for you. The staff in the clerk's office is extremely busy. We do not want to create unnecessary work for them by submitting incomplete or error-filled forms. Finally, do not submit registration forms from non-Madison municipalities to the Madison clerk. The Madison clerk's office will, of course, pass the forms on to the correct clerk, but they should not have to do that. It's our job to make sure the forms go to the correct clerk. Thanks for viewing this module and helping others register to vote.